welcome back for some more highly opinionated musings by yours truly. Today's book is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I can't say it was a good book. I can't say it was a bad book. All I know is I didn't enjoy it. It just goes to show I'm not a book talk person. I don't really care for the things that blow up on social media, largely because they're either super cheesy romances or literary / almost literary fiction, which is where this book falls in. I can see why people liked it because it was well written and it's got a good premise. I think for me, the problem was just the content. It's not up my alley. That said, the premise of The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, wow, that's a tongue twister to say out loud, is that this old Hollywood starlet named Evelyn Hugo, who has been married 7 times, decides to bestow upon this mixed race woman named Monique her life story. We have no idea why. She says that it will all be apparent in the end, but we go through her telling us about all of her husbands until that grand finale, the big reveal as to why she has chosen Monique to write her biography. I liked that idea of she is this high-profile movie star who's now in her 70s or 80s. She's had all these failed marriages, and she's ultra private about all of that. And so people want to know, what about your husbands? And Monique's biggest question was, who was your great love? And what we learned is her great love was actually a woman, which I have to say my very, very, very favorite part of this book is the very, very, very end. I think it was literally the last sentence. Here's a spoiler. Evelyn has died. She kills herself. So now Monique is publishing this book and she's like kind of given an intro. She's saying, well, everybody wants to know about my husbands, but they're really going to be more interested in my wife. So I thought that was a really great last line. But for me, I didn't care for the relationship between Evelyn and her wife. I thought it was a little obvious, and that's always a problem for me. I was kind of hoping it would go in a different direction. Really, that's what bothered me, because her wife, her name is Celia. They are both rising stars when they work on Little Women together. They're just friends at first until they go to a party. She's there with her second husband, and he's an abusive guy, but she's in love with him. Anyways, she goes to this party, and another coworker is like, what is going on with you and Celia? And she's like, what do you mean, what's going on with us? And she's like, well, you know that she's a lesbian, right? And it's at this point that Evelyn realizes that she's emphatic to Monique that she's not a lesbian, she's bisexual. For me, I didn't see much of that. I felt like there was so much focus on her relationship with Celia and how taboo that was in their current climate in the 50s, 60s, 70s, that we did not see much of her being in love with men. Granted, Don, her second husband who had been abusive, she admits to, he's the first person that she ever enjoyed sleeping with, and that she was madly in love with him when they got married. But her subsequent husbands were beards, essentially. And I would have enjoyed seeing more of how she could love a man. Rather, it felt like she was claiming bisexuality to avoid being labeled homosexual. If you disagree, that is completely fine. I could see how she could fool herself because that was not an acceptable sexual orientation while she was going up through Hollywood or just growing up, period. And so I could see how she would think that she leans more towards bisexuality, but I, as a reader, was not convinced. I was convinced that this woman was the love of her life and men were an afterthought. On that same token, if she's considering a woman the love of her life, but she could still love or be sexually attracted to men, then okay, yes, bisexuality it is. I just felt like there's so much bent towards one than the other that I got tired of her defending herself and her sexuality. I just wanted her to be like, okay, yes, actually, I prefer females. But that's just me. But I think that's why I didn't care for the novel so much, because I felt like she was constantly defending her choices to be with men, when all along, all she really wanted was to be with a woman. And so it tainted all of these marriages she had and all of this really interesting backstory for her. The first husband, who, that's the first inkling that maybe she's even asexual. What's the book? I'll post it. That's Not What Happened by Cody Keplinger. I think that's the one it was, where the main character was asexual, and I was not convinced. Like, I did not think Keplinger did a good job at explaining asexuality. I felt like it was yet again an attempt at explaining an alternate sexuality, but it still felt like more of an excuse than an actuality. In any case, one of her distinguishing, if not her distinguishing characteristic, is her large chest, followed by her eyebrows. No other curves but these. And she talks about how she developed early. Her mother had died, so she didn't really have anybody to talk to about these things. And she had been molested by a young guy, like not a classmate, I think it was like her friend's brother or something, who worked at a gas station. And basically she would let him feel her up if he let her have free stuff. She talks about how she was not attracted to him. She did not want to be giving any part of herself to him. And then she meets Ernie, and he is a neighbor of a friend, and she learns that he is going to go to Hollywood. And that was something her mother had always promised her, that they would get out of Hell's Kitchen and the mother would become a famous starlet. They'd have all they ever needed. The mother then dies, and as soon as she hears about Ernie going to go to Hollywood, she knocks on his door with an excuse, lies about her age, they get married, and they go off to Hollywood, at which point she starts making her way in the world. When she starts to really become someone, or she's on the cusp of becoming someone, the heads of the studio. Harry, she becomes very good friends with, and then there's Ari, who she allows to have some ways with her in order to have her way with him with her career. At this point where she's finally proving her worth and her talent, they pull her aside and they're like, look, you can't be married. That's just not gonna work for us. It's not gonna work for you. So she, who was never in love with Ernie and had never wanted to sleep with him, was like, that's fine. That is okay with me. She divorces him and she starts going out on dates. She automatically meets Dawn, claims she's in love with him. They get married. The abuse starts very soon thereafter. And they're married for years upon years upon years. But there is this one moment where I'm like, because she meets Celia, and so I liked Evelyn. I did. I thought she was brassy. I thought she was interesting. But then I felt like Celia was boring. And Celia was whiny. And then Evelyn, when their relationship started dissolving because they wanted to approach it differently in terms of people knowing, Evelyn got kind of whiny herself. And I liked her apart from Celia. I liked her scheming. I liked what she did to get to the top. She was interesting as a character. She was boring in terms of being in a relationship with Celia. But she, getting on Little Women, and all of the actresses are like, we don't want to work with Celia St. James because she's another rising star and she's going to outshine all of us. Celia's like, hey, let's hang out. Or maybe it was Evelyn. One of them was like, let's hang out. And Celia, she suggests a well-known ice cream shop. And Evelyn's like, I know exactly what's going on here. She's using me because she already had some clout. She's using me for her own gains, redirects them to another place, and confronts her. And I thought this was so cool. I loved how she was like, look, you're using me, I'm using you, and then they just have this kind of back and forth. And for me, I was starting to get a sense of something going on Celia's side. Then we have this moment where they are alone in Evelyn's house, and it kind of got a little bit corny for me because the wine spills on Celia's white blouse, and now she's naked from the chest up, and Evelyn can't stop looking, only to be interrupted by Dawn. We fast forward, we're at the party, and this is when Evelyn realizes she likes both men and women because she learns that Celia is into women, and it makes her jealous to think that she could have been with other women while Evelyn had been married. And then she realizes, oh, you know what? The fact that my husband is being serviced by another woman, that bothers me too. She ultimately decides to leave Dawn, and he blacklists her. I kind of missed some of this because I was fast forwarding, but the gist is he blackballs her, and I thought, if anything, there was a really good depiction of male dominance and how frustrating it is that she was not at fault. He was having at least that one affair, but he was also physically abusive, and the fact that, I mean, I guess she couldn't leave him. She never tried to leave him. There was no intimation that she wanted to leave him because he was abusing her. But you do get the sense, just from history, that she couldn't have left him. Like, in any case, she would have been blackballed despite the fact that she had a good reason to leave. So now she's watching Celia have all this success, and Dawn has had success, and she's nothing. She encounters a French movie maker, and he offers her a part in a French film, and he's like, but you need to be topless. My French actress is willing to be topless, so you're gonna have to do it too. This bothered me only because I felt like we did a 180 from Evelyn standing her ground and being a strong woman to being willing to become a sex object. In any case, she's like, yes. However, I've got this really great idea because she and Celia have begun their own affair. She's like, I'll do it topless, but knowing what people want, knowing what it's like to desire something and how it's all about almost getting it that kind of gets you where you need to be, we're gonna cut it right where you'd actually see something. Because it was a huge hit, and she's able to rise back to stardom. She marries her co-star for the next film in order to boost sales. So that's her third marriage. They pretty much live well. There's no sexual chemistry between them because that was sort of the point. That was not the point of their marriage. They carried on their own affairs until he comes to her one day and he's like, so here's the thing. I'm in love with someone else and she's pregnant. Because the thing about Evelyn is she's so intelligent. She knows exactly how to spin things so that even though she's got to get a divorce again, she can do it so that neither one of them are cast in a bad light, or they're both cast in a bad light, but their movies will still rise to the top. And because he got his girlfriend pregnant, her scheme won't work. Come up with a new scheme. Everything's hunky-dory. Her next husband is a rock star. She marries him because he had put it out in the media that he wanted to sleep, he wanted to conquer Evelyn Hugo. She, Harry, and Celia are at his concert. She holds Celia's hand and somebody in the crowd sees it. And because they're all judgmental, she's just assuming that this woman is then telling her husband next to her, and they're both judging her and staring at her. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I could see how in this time and place, yes, that's exactly what's happening. But it felt a bit offensive that you just assume that this is how people are going to be thinking about you and judging you. But whatever, that was kind of another underlying problem I had where it was soapboxy to some level, and I don't like that. I don't want somebody to put their cause on a pedestal and push it on me. So she decides to marry him, but with the intention of it being annulled. Like she has this game plan that she's gonna get him to elope with her, and then automatically they're gonna annul the marriage. All of this to distract from whatever hullabaloo may have been caused by her being seen holding Celia's hand in public. She achieves exactly what she wants to achieve. However, there are two wrenches thrown into her great plan. One is Celia did not realize she was actually going to sleep with this guy. Two, he did not want to wear protection. That ended up in her getting pregnant. That led to Celia's leaving her, which is kind of the first time, or not, I don't know. It was just one of the moments where they disagreed about how to pursue their relationship, because Evelyn sees things for how they are. She sees that society is not going to accept their relationship, and she knows that if it comes out, their careers are going to tank. Celia, who grew up Southern and pampered, and this is where I'm totally team Evelyn, because Celia, who has always had everything handed to her, is like, I'll give up everything for you. And Evelyn's basically like, but you do not understand what it means to want. I understand what it means to want. So if you had no more career, you wouldn't be able to handle that. Celia walks out and they don't speak for many years. Actually, I had the husbands mixed up. So the rock star comes before the guy who got his girlfriend pregnant. She learns through Harry that Celia, the guy that Celia ends up marrying, who's this famous quarterback, he's actually gay, and he is in a relationship with Harry. After Evelyn's marriage hits the skids, she comes up with this great plan to marry Harry, because then they can be each other's beards, because she and Celia reconnect. And then Harry can be with his guy, she can be with Celia. And for a number of years, this works, until the day when she and Harry decide to have a child. This greatly disturbs Celia, because Celia, she's really selfish. She's super immature. I just don't like her. I do not know why Evelyn does. They're so polar opposite. It's like Evelyn is an adult and Celia is a child. And I got so tired of Celia's inability to see how things had to be. And I know people are gonna have all sorts of things to say about that, but it was a different time and a place. It was a different culture. It was not acceptable. It was almost life-preserving to have your beard, not to flaunt your same-sex relationship, because people were not going to accept it. So I liked how she wanted to champion her relationship. She wanted to champion who she was, and she wanted to be proud of her relationship with Evelyn. But I was just like, stop it already. Can we just sit down and see things for how they are? Like how it's being forced to be? You don't have another choice. And Evelyn even uses Rock Hudson as an example. So I thought that was kind of neat as well. I liked this insight into all of her relationships for that very reason, because if you go on Wikipedia, you'll see these stars who have multiple marriages, and I've always wondered why. What's the reason for all of these marriages? Even though I wished I'd had more of a balance between loving men, loving women to support her bisexual claims, I did think they were varied enough that they gave you good insight as to why celebrities may have had so many marriages. Celia and Evelyn have another fight. Celia leaves. This time Evelyn does go after her, and she's just like, absolutely not. She divorces her husband. That devastates Harry, because then that means the end of kind of their golden era. But she and Harry are continuing to live on. I don't remember why because it's been like 2 weeks since I've read this book. But I do know I lost interest very early on. I kept waiting to see if things would change, if the characters would become more interesting, if the plot would become more dynamic, but it was all variations on the same theme, which made it monotonous. Oh, I know what it is. So she works with that French director again, and he declares his love for her, and he tells her he has loved her since they first met. And so Harry is like, why don't you just marry him? She does, and she quickly learns he does not love her. He loves the idea of her. He loves being married to a superstar. She's still on really good terms with Harry. He's my favorite husband because he was her best friend. He was something of a father figure to her because she came out to Hollywood when she was 15. She met him when she was like 16, 17. And so he's really guided her through things. I loved their relationship. Even though it was platonic, I loved the way that they interacted. Things happen. She reconnects with Celia. They are having this romance by letter. One day she's like, I want to be with you. I'm gonna come out to see you. So she's got her daughter packed up to go off to hang out with Harry for however long. And then she decides, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll take the letters with me. She goes back inside and she finds her husband is reading them. He's like, excuse me? They have this big fight. She's like, yeah, this is how it is. I don't want to be with you. And I don't really care if you try to out me. She's able to spin it so that he looks more like a scorned ex-husband than anything else. They obviously divorce. She resumes her relationship with Celia. The problem with this is that Celia is dying. I don't remember what exactly called, but Celia is dying from a heart condition due to smoking. And so they decide that they're gonna go to Spain so that they can live together out of the public eye. Evelyn hatches another plot to bring everybody, because she just wants her whole family with her. She's not gonna leave her daughter in the States while she's off living for however long in Spain. Harry's like, this isn't gonna work. I don't want to go to Spain, and so there you go. She learns that he is in a relationship with another man. Caveat, John, Celia's ex-husband, the football player, had died from cancer. It had just left Harry absolutely heartbroken. So now the fact that he may have fallen in love with somebody else is huge. However, he had become an alcoholic since John's death. Some way or another, he ends up getting in a car crash and dying. Okay, let me rewind that. Some way or another, he's drunk, he's driving, he crashes the car, the man that he's in love with dies, he ends up dying at the hospital. Evelyn stages it so that it looks like the other guy was driving just to save face for everybody. She and her daughter, Celia, and Celia's brother all go off to Spain, but not before Celia orchestrates Evelyn marrying her brother. Obviously, the brother knows and accepts Celia's orientation. It's almost a reversal of roles in which this is the time when Evelyn is saying, I want to be loud and proud. I don't care who knows. And Celia's the one who's like, no, no, no. And so by marrying her brother, she can leave her estate to Evelyn because she can leave the estate to the brother and thereby leave it to Evelyn. For like 10 years or so, they're one big happy family, and then Celia dies, and Evelyn comes back to the States, lives out the rest of her life. Now we're kind of back at present time when she has reached out to Monique. And the thing about Monique is she's a journalist for a well-known magazine. They are not giving her any shots. Evelyn, because she wants Monique, contacts this magazine and is like, hey, I will give you an exclusive as long as this is the person who writes it. Monique shows up and she's like, actually, that was a ruse. I want to give you my life story and then you get full rights to it and you will be a millionaire. You cannot publish it until I die. So we have that hanging over our heads the entire time that something's gonna go on. Monique keeps asking, what does this mean? When you say after you die, is that sooner? Is that later? And then after she finagles with her boss a better job and better pay, Evelyn's like, okay, so basically you've used me to get what you want, and by agreeing to certain terms, it also means that you gotta stop asking me questions. If I don't answer the question, you gotta let it drop. Here are some spoilers. Evelyn has breast cancer. Her daughter Connor had already died of breast cancer. This is why she decides to commit suicide, is she doesn't want to go through that. And she has chosen Monique to write this, despite the fact that they have no connections. It's because Monique's dad, anybody see where I'm going here? Monique's dad was the passenger in the car with Harry. Harry had fallen in love with Monique's dad, and remember I mentioned Monique is mixed race, so not only had he fallen in love with a man, but he'd also fallen in love with a black man, which was not acceptable. This enrages Monique because, I mean, we knew her dad had died, but we didn't really know the exact circumstances. However, Monique is irate because Evelyn's staging her dad as being the driver cast a shadow over him and his reputation. And she's like, I can't believe you would do that. In the end, everything's hunky-dory. She does realize what Evelyn's intentions are. However, she does nothing to prevent it. Evelyn dies. She publishes the book. There we go, there we go, there we go. That did catch me off guard to learn that Harry had been in love with Monique's dad, only because we got nothing about her dad. We do know he died young, or when she was young. We do know that she absolutely adored him and he was a great dad, but there was no indication that he could have been interested in men. And so it was interesting the way it was dealt, because he left a letter, because Harry had said, like, let's do this, you know, leave your wife, marry me, or be monogamous with me. And the dad was like, look, I know that you and Evelyn are making things work, because that had been Harry's plan. He and Evelyn remarried, and then Celia could marry this other guy, and they could essentially do what they had done decades earlier. The dad had written him a letter, which is why he'd gotten so intoxicated, saying, look, I know this works for you and Evelyn, and even though my wife and I may not have this kind of a relationship, but she is my best friend, and I cannot imagine doing that to her, and I cannot imagine doing that to my daughter, so thank you, but no thanks. Yeah, overall, I thought the book was well written. As I said, I was bored. Short, sweet, not as short as I thought it would be, but have you read this book? What do you think? Talk to you later. Bye.